glycogen, right? You're not providing your body with actual carbohydrates to help store those glycogen stores. It eventually will stress your body out. What is going to actually bring results? Like person, for example, might be like, oh, the carnivore gave me results. And they're now associating the concept of carnivore versus eating better, maybe being a calorie deficit when maybe they were eating too much, or maybe they started exercising better. People trying to seek the best information, but they have no clarity. They have no idea what they're doing. So they're just literally looking to Instagram or social media. It doesn't mean anything to the general population because was it best for, some guy named Jacob or Audrey down the road?
Fitness just overall has shifted so hard, functional space overtaking fitness to the point where people are now seeking and feeling like there's constantly something wrong with them. So important to understand like the body as a whole system. Oftentimes is a very simple kind of process for most people. We need to exercise better, eat better, and we need to eat whole foods and all of those things. But the simple things often aren't the things that are marketed well.
Two of the things that I've seen in the science stuff that has freaking pissed me off. One is you don't need to lift heavy, and the way that people are talking about hypertrophy. Stu Phillips put up this post. It's like most people aren't working out. Most people don't lift weights. This is who we need to reach. That is the point. But the thing is, people that actually want to build a physique are taking a dip for health people and trying to make that work for them. And then they wonder why they can't see results and there's something broken with them. Well, because you're listening to science and science doesn't work for you because it's talking about not someone wanting to improve a physique. And then the other one, I love Lauren Collins, so simple, but her content right now. She's trying to disprove false science and things that aren't true. Even Alan Bacon's doing it. I love Alan, but now people are saying, it doesn't matter if you train fasted and all these other things. It's like, well, yeah, it doesn't matter. It's not going to do any harm, but it's not going to improve your physique either. And then people are worried about cortisol. Well, if you're constantly stressed out, trying to push your physique this direction, you're not fueling it enough. There's no context given to that either. And most of the people that are looking for validation for their approaches don't need someone to validate their approaches. The people that actually use it effectively aren't looking for the validation.
And the thing is that SICA, like calories in versus calories out, it's a real thing. Obviously, it's real. You can't, I think it's been oversimplified to a fault. And I think maybe perhaps because, nutrition, the human body, it is complex. I think there's a lot of people who are caught up with just trying to lean out. They think eating less is going to do it. It's not. It's just,
people would be really surprised if they dieted down in the way that they wanted to and actually exposed what's underneath the fat that they needed to lose. And I think a lot of people underestimate how much muscle they actually need to achieve the body that they think that they want. And that's where that oversimplification comes in, because it's just people constantly just eating less and less and not fueling properly. It's a different thing than recomping your body.
Hello, and welcome to 100% Real with Ruby. Today I have, it's been years since I've had the Liptons on. And Sarah are back, and we spoke on the last few podcasts about many realities of progress. We spoke on calories then as well, and why macro calculators are so inaccurate. We spoke about cortisol. We spoke about fat loss, muscle building. We spoke about where training fits into this, where overtraining, under recovery, over dieting all fit into this. But it's time for an upgrade, because now it's about science. That is what we have the issue with. Science doesn't apply to you. Oh, wait, but science should always apply, right? Yeah, but science relies on the context of that study. It relies on the context of who is actually in that study. And it's not you. It is not tailored to you, and it's not tailored to your goals in the long term. For example, there is a lot out there on you shouldn't train. Okay, you've probably heard me rant on about this for podcasts now, but it's just, it needs to stop. You don't need to train heavy to get results. Heavy is context number one, but also it doesn't really matter about high reps and all this kind of stuff. The people that are looking for this information to, like, if you're looking to this science for validation that what you're doing is enough, then that isn't applying to you, because you're the ones that actually want to get results beyond where you are now, meaning you need to take whatever you're doing beyond where you are now, not what you've been trying to find validation for. And I don't mean that in a really hard way, but 12 to 15 reps, that is so effective in a lab setting, because you're forced to train to absolute crying, eye popping out failure, pretty much. But no one is doing that in the real life scenario of things, because no one is going to go through the discomfort of using the right weight selection to train to failure for 15, 16, 20 reps. Like, that's bullshit. No one does that, because lightweight, high reps, with the lightweight being accounted for in that percentage of whatever it is that you're doing, is the most fatiguing thing there is. And it's hard as hell, but it doesn't make it effective. Same with dieting, which is where I wanted Sarah to start off, because everyone loves the honeymoon phase. And this is the reality of progress. The honeymoon phase, you can go through hard shit and be okay with it. Kind of like you can deal with bullshit from your partner to start with, and then you really need to start facing it and start learning how to have conversations with your partner and start doing effective communication and learn how to process those arguments. And the same thing with when you start your thing with your diet. If you're always trying to have a honeymoon phase, then you're always starting over, because the honeymoon phase only exists the first time you get married. Well, the first time that you start a deficit. But the trap with this, which kind of could be a trap with the honeymoon phase, I don't know how it would apply to that, because I've not really been married and kind of divorced over and over again to really know how I'd feel having my sixth marriage, although I'd probably be like, I don't know, I probably would put myself into counseling then, thinking just, I don't know, regardless, which you would probably want to put yourself into counseling with a nutrition counselor by then, hopefully. Regardless, you can't keep having the honeymoon phase over, and it is going to get hard. The thing is that hard actually in the direction that you want? Because it can be hard and ineffective, dieting or training wise. And because Sarah said something that is everything that I try to make you guys understand, you are always trying to lean out, but leaning out isn't done by less food, by trying to lose fat, by chasing a number down, because lean is muscle. Losing fat and losing weight is not muscle. However, losing fat happens only the first one, maybe two times. Then it's just losing weight, which can be anything. Most of the time, the percentage of that starts to become more and more muscle. The fat loss is only a thing the first, maybe second time that you try to lose weight. But if that is all you keep trying to do, this is when the functional issues, like you mentioned, come up. And this is why what you're doing, like, I'm sick of people just thinking of calories in. Calories in is bullshit to focus on. And I'm not even going to mention calories out, because that's the point. The calories in that you take impact the calories out. But we need to stop just calculating calories, because it's what are we calculating them for? Doesn't matter if you're not actually doing what you need to do to build a physique, because it's not food that does that. You just need ample food, which is carbs. And that's where I wanted Kenny to take this next, but which is carbs, to build a physique, to fuel your training, because it's only training that builds it. But you also then need to rebuild extra if you want the muscle mass there. So with that, I'm going to let both of you take it off.
Yeah, thank you so much for having us back. Like you said, it's been a long time, so we're super excited to talk with you and everybody that's listening. But yeah, like you said, weight loss and leaning out, they're two different things in terms of what I think most people think that they want when it comes to fitness. And one question I kind of really like to ask new clients that on board, or someone who's having a hard time, maybe that they're really scale focused. And that's been, as a female, he's typically drilled into our heads. It's like the scale, it matters, it's a measure of success. And I think one thing that I really like to ask, and for anybody that's listening, is, would you rather have your goal body, or would you rather hit a goal weight? Because again, those are two different things. I think a lot of people underestimate how much they would weigh with the amount of muscle they need to look the way that they want. Speaking from personal experience myself, like when I first kind of started out in fitness, I had a goal weight of wanting to weigh 104 pounds, and I got there and I was super unhappy with the way that I looked. I looked skinny fat, just didn't have any muscle tone. And, when I did get to the place where I was super happy with my physique, I was 25 pounds heavier. And had you told me that when I first kind of started out, I would have told you that you're freaking crazy. There's no way that I'd want to go out of my way to gain 25 pounds. Absolutely not. But I think a lot of people kind of just, women especially, just because of media and everything that we've kind of been fed since the dawn of time, since I can remember, is that smaller is better, smaller pant size, lower weight scale, it's just really drilled. And I think the focus really does need to shift to building muscle, not just from a looks perspective, but from a health perspective, especially as you age. Like, you don't realize that muscle literally acts as an endocrine organ. It keeps you healthy. It keeps your blood sugar regulated. It keeps you strong throughout the rest of your life. It's not just about looking a certain way. It's also about longevity. And I know that there was a post that went viral a long time ago of a female who lost a ton of weight, and she was like, this isn't a joke, like, I am super skinny and I lost a ton of weight, but I am diabetic now because she doesn't have muscle to regulate her blood sugar. And that is like, I'm glad that that went viral. I'm so sad that that happened to that girl, but this is the reality of the situation. The more that you diet, the more that you spend time not at maintenance, not fueling your body properly, not lifting the weights and taking the time that is needed to build muscle, the worse off you're going to be down the road. And I know a lot of people, I'm not here for a long, YOLO, I'm not here for a long time, a fun time, right? But the reality situation is, like, your health is everything. When you don't have it, you have nothing else. You can't prioritize anything else. And I think it's something that is still missing. You know, we're in 2025, and it's still so shocking to me that this is still something that as coaches we're still having to argue about. You know, I wish more people just took the time to do what was necessary to build, because you just took those years that you spent dieting and you applied it to just building muscle, you'd be in a much better place. But it's a hard mindset shift for sure.
Don't move on yet. That part there, you just said if you put all of that into building muscle, I'm not coming at this as like speaking on it. I'm coming at this as I want you to take this. Okay, but I just wasted all that time. Now I'm in a worse place. I need to hurry up and lose the fat. I don't have as much time. I already wasted the time. And now all I'm doing is gaining belly fat. Where does that come in? And also the fact that people are so worried about carbs, and you just mentioned the whole muscle thing, they go hand in hand. That's the, but you take that part there where people then say that it's too late, because you just mentioned if you put all of this time into building muscle, not only will you have been in a better metabolic and health standpoint, but you would be that much closer to the look that you've always thought that dieting would give you. If you just focus on fueling with carbs and not like allowing yourself to eat enough food and not be scared, I think the biggest setback is the fear of gaining weight and the fear of weight and the fear of fat gain more than anything else. It's, I need to do everything I can to not gain more weight, to not get worse, to not lose progress, that we keep ourselves stuck in this place where we're never actually achieving anything. But if we allow ourselves to build muscle and fuel it with carbs, to allow ourselves to eat more food, we're going to get the results that we thought fat loss would always give us. And this isn't saying that there isn't going to be a future fat loss phase. Most of the time there is going to have to be at some point, but it's not the starting place for so many people. And if it is the starting place, it is not the end place. It's the starting place for a certain period of time. And then the majority is going to be building muscle.
Yeah. So I guess my question is for that person that maybe is struggling with that. Well, I've already wasted all this time. I'm in a rush. Like, well, what is the rush exactly? I would love to know what the rush is for that, because if you just took would you rather take the next year to actually bring your body to a place where fat loss becomes much easier because you've taken the time to build muscle? Or would you rather spend the rest of your life jumping in and out of diets? Because that's what it's going to end up being, is that you're going to continue to jump in and out of diets. The fat loss is meant to be a phase. It's not meant to be forever, but so many people are treating it as if it is forever. I need to be constantly losing weight. I'm constantly jumping in and out of diets. I'm trying different things, and this works for a little bit, and then it stops because I can't sustain it. And then I jump into something else, and then I lose 5 pounds again, or I lose 10 pounds again, and then I gain 20 back. So what exactly is the rush? One, because you're going to spend years doing that. You've already done that. It doesn't work. You already know it doesn't work. So why not try something that might make you a little uncomfortable in the interim that you haven't tried yet? That is pretty much guaranteed, if you put in the effort and you put in the time, to have a massive return, versus having to do this for the rest of your life with no outcome that you desire. And it is really hard. It's not something that I'm going to say is easy to have a mindset shift for, but it is something that if you haven't done it, you need to try it. don't knock it until you try it, because if you've done everything else and that has only provided temporary results, you should probably spend time doing something that's going to provide a long-term solution. And most people have a hard time understanding what long-term means, because I think we've been so jaded by social media to think that I can achieve this in 8 weeks, I can achieve this in 12 weeks. And that's not the reality of the situation. And it's something that, we've talked about, that I'm sure we're going to touch on, is that what Kenny had mentioned prior to us even getting on the podcast was the real transformation has kind of gotten lost in what is actually achievable without exogenous things, or things that have essentially run rampant in the industry for a long time, from bodybuilding perspective to crazy diets and all of those things. But the real, like, how do I say this, like, common transformation is lost. No one knows what that looks like anymore because of social media and Photoshop and all of those things. It's lost. So it's hard to have a general understanding of what a real long-term transformation looks like, because we're always looking at things on our timeline of other people's progress, and you don't know what goes into those progress photos. That's marketing. Transparency is lacking in our industry as well, and it's misleading, I think, for a lot of people.
Kenny, I know that you mentioned this before as well. You said that the clients that you have are ones that don't have impatience. So I was talking about people rushing the process, and you don't have any clients that suffer with that. And the thing behind that is because the ones that stay on with coaches long-term are the ones that get long-term results, and whichever way you want to take it, the ones that fall off are the ones that don't have patience. And it kind of makes me, like, I actually get really sad, like, not just saying sad, but I do feel it. Just the empath in me just wants to cry when I hear and see that the real meaning and the reality of progress is so lost, because it, like, I know how hard it is to struggle with that stuff, but it, like, we're more impatient than ever. We are bombarded with more than ever. We are so confused more than ever. And I feel like if people put a lot more into the questioning of themselves, questioning of their thoughts, and not taking every thought and feeling as the truth, and starting to just figure out why they believe what they believe, they will get so much further. Because I think that is the fundamental shift that everyone needs to make. Because as soon as you can start to question your own beliefs a lot more, that is the only way that you can start to change. Because then in the process of working with a coach, if I had to pick out one characteristic of my most successful clients and the clients that thrive and that we thrive together, it's, well, two of them are therapists in themselves. They're like my top clients that have made the most change. There's still a lot that we're working through, but the habits that we've already abolished and created are the ones that I know are going to take her further than she's ever been before, because of the awareness that she now has. She is seeing things she's never seen before. That's also going to tie into the carbs and where carbs fit into this. I think the biggest fight in this is the anti-diet versus diet culture, because both to me are bad. The anti-diet culture is bad and the diet culture is bad, but at the same time, there are aspects of both that are also really good, because the diet culture is phenomenal in making sure that you have some structure. I think too many people try to enter at the level that people are marketing to you, because you can't just start off with the flexibility that they're promising you. It is so impossible. I feel like, tell me if you agree, you had more success before COVID with your clients. The ones that stayed with you and came with you before COVID were the most successful, because that was before flexible dieting / macros were so big, because that was when meal plans and having more strict, like, not restriction, but like strictness was a thing. My most successful transformations came when I was able to get people to earn their flexibility, to earn macro tracking, versus just trying to make it up on the fly. Because back then they were able to create some, because when you're forced to get yourself into a meal plan with a coach that guides you through it to then move you through the phases of getting to a more flexible way of shifting your foods around and learning how to substitute things in. So then you understand how to do that, to then move into a more flexible and move along the flexibility scale. That develops so much routine. It develops so much structure that now they have the power to be able to implement it in all other areas. Like my clients that I still have from 5, 6, 7 years ago are my most successful clients who go on holidays and succeed, who are able to do all of these things because that was their base that they started off at. They stopped trying to enter at level 1,000,000. And this also goes for training, because that's something you wanted to talk on, because I think the carbs then fits into the training.
Yeah. So I would say that honestly, I think this dichotomy between the diet culture versus the anti-diet culture is the problem in and of itself. So the fact that people are trying to side with one or the other is creating a huge just piece of disinformation and confusion. And I think a lot of people don't realize, like Sarah had mentioned something about YOLO, where like this concept of YOLO, where if we're going to define that as like, oh, I'm just going to like, screw it, I'm going to do whatever the hell I want, right? Because I don't want to be restricted anymore. Well, if that's the definition of how we're defining YOLO, why were you feeling restricted before? Because that's an issue in and of itself, where there's this conception of like, why, you know what I mean? Like dieting, right? The word diet, it usually is associated with like, got to restrict, got to take away things, but why? You know, like, are you thinking that way because you're under the impression that I got to reduce certain foods, I have to eat healthy, I can't do certain things that I want to do that, you know, may get me fat, or however you want to frame this? I think that's the problem in of itself. And personally speaking, and Sarah, I know you agree with this too, but for my or our, I guess, philosophy with food and philosophy with training and philosophy with fitness as a whole is that fitness is a lifestyle, and fitness is not meant to overtake your life. It's meant to complement your life. And when you start to think about all the things that you are, whether you're a mom, a dad, a student, maybe you're, I don't know, a busy entrepreneur, whatever it is, you're going to have a certain lifestyle, and it's going to be different than someone else that may be in the same exact field as you are. And so that uniqueness that you behold needs to be addressed, and needs to be honored. And if you're not doing that, all of a sudden you're isolating the most important piece to all of this, because now you're trying to fit multiple pieces of advice that may not fit your puzzle. The thing is, you know, dieting, whether it's for building muscle, losing fat, any of those things, it's really not meant to be super hard. It shouldn't be hard. It is meant to just be complementary to your life.
I don't like the word complementary, to be honest. I don't think it should be as a compliment, because then it's almost, because compliments are like, okay, well, it's nice to have, but it's not necessary. I feel like it is the absolute foundation for anything else to be based off with, because I know you agree, because Sarah said it already. Without your health, there's nothing. I would also say without muscle, there is nothing, because you're going to turn into someone who's completely dependent on everyone as you age. And the whole purpose of doing this is so we can live a fuller, more richer life as we age. Yet we don't think about 5 years down the road. We don't think about how our actions now are going to impact where we are in the future. Like when people take friggin' steroids, they don't think about how that's going to impact them when they need to go on testosterone therapy, because they just want to look really good now. They just want to get the girl now. And I don't know why I'm using guys as an example here. For females, it can be, well, I don't know, doing those lip injections impact you negatively? I don't know. Like doing some sort of beauty thing, I don't know, because I don't do any of that shit, but doing whatever beauty thing means that it's going to lead to you're going to have even worse of a face later on in the future, or whatever else it is. Kind of like, well, you're sacrificing your future, whatever else, just so you can have the perfect duck lips now. I don't really think that lips are something that turns into a really bad thing in the future, but it's the only thing that I thought of.
Yeah, I guess what I mean by complimentary is more so it should feel fluid. It should feel natural. Basically, like, for example, we were talking earlier about like carnivore and keto and just like these different diets, right? Where a lot of people tend to flock to these things for certain results. Like you're saying, like lip injections, or maybe jumping on testosterone, that sort of thing, right? To get some quick result. But the thing is that you're trying to fit yourself into this puzzle piece that may not actually fit. So what I mean by complementary is more so it needs to align with your health. If it does not align with your health, then it's not complementary.
People also don't know what that is because people think that carnivore is health.
Right. And that's the whole thing. So I guess this is a good time to go into carbohydrates and just food in general. But basically, if we're exercising and the intention behind that exercise is to maybe look a certain way, maybe that's a motivator, or maybe it is to add longevity, or it is to get better at that activity itself, we have to ask, what are we doing to empower, our performance? So our performance, at least in my opinion, is an extension of our health. It's a window to let us know, hey, is our body actually using energy more effectively? And are you actually transforming into what you're trying to do? So for example, are you getting more powerful? Are you getting stronger? Is your sleep getting better? Is your mood getting better? Is your menstrual cycle getting more regular? Is it less painful for you? These are just factors you can pay attention to, but they also are usual consequences of someone getting better at whatever they're doing. So whether it's weightlifting, running, swimming, it doesn't really matter. And so if we look at calories, for example, right, calories in versus calories out, CICO, this is often thought of like, okay, if I eat this many calories, I should expect some sort of fat loss, or I should expect some sort of muscle gain. But CICO, all it's telling us is whether we're going to gain weight or lose weight. Something that I really like, and I got this from Blake West, who works for, I think, Alan Kress. He's a very good coach, but he used the term calories as a stress reservoir, where basically the amount of calories you have is a stress reservoir where it's supporting everything that you're doing throughout the day. So whether it's picking up the kids, going to school, driving to work, working out, recovering, whatever, the amount of calories is simply just a reservoir of energy. And so if you're trying to add muscle or lose fat or just get healthy as a whole, you need to make sure that stress reservoir is not only filled up to a certain degree, but it's also comprised of the right type of fuel. If, for example, like Sarah had mentioned, muscle is an endocrine organ, the more muscle you have, typically the healthier you're going to be, right? The longer you're going to live, it's just a good thing to have. But if you're trying to add tissue to your body, it's like adding a room to your house. If you add a room to your house, you can expect your bills to go up, your water bill to go up, your energy bill to go up, pretty much just more money being spent. And so it's the same concept as basically you need more energy. You have to have more energy to support that muscle tissue. And the more muscle you have, the better your metabolic rate's going to be. You're literally adding more metabolic activity with your body. So in a very, very, I use this analogy a lot, but it's kind of like if you take a car and let's say it's somehow possible to take a 6-cylinder engine and convert it into an 8-cylinder or 10-cylinder or 12-cylinder, that's like adding muscle. But in the same breath, you need to also make sure that the exhaust system can handle the engine. So what that means is that if you let's say you have a Ferrari engine and you slap a Nissan Altima exhaust system on a Ferrari, that car would literally blow the fuck up. Like it would literally implode on itself. It wouldn't be able to do anything. So you would need to make sure that not only are you building muscle, but you're actually also giving your body what it needs to use that energy effectively. So carbohydrates, as an example here, since we're talking about carnivore, carnivore, keto, if I were to choose one or the other, for specific reasons, I would probably go with keto because I think keto has a little more application than carnivore, but very, very specific applications. But in general, carbohydrates, they do a lot of things for the body. They're very, very anabolic, meaning that they can help build muscle. And so one, they protect muscle tissue from excessive protein breakdown. What that means is that when you work out, you're going to have literal muscular damage, which is totally fine. That's part of the game, but you don't want that damage to be excessive. And so carbs will basically mitigate that. So you hold on to more tissue. And then secondly, your muscle bellies, they literally are gas tanks, like storage tanks that store carbohydrates, kind of like a water balloon, where if you fill up the balloon with water, it's going to grow, 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 and it's going to be hard. Your muscles are the very same way, where the more glycogen or carbohydrates your muscles are able to store, the more power, the more strength you're able to develop, which means that your performance goes up. And if you think about this, though, you hold on more muscle tissue, plus you have better performance, you have better workouts, and you have more muscle left over, you're going to have better progress. And then thirdly, this is not the last reason, but it's a very important reason. Your thyroid, which is a little butterfly gland right here, it is the master regulator of your metabolic rate, and it is indirectly stimulated by carbohydrates. In fact, your liver is a very profound just piece of health in your body. It's like the main recycling center of your body, and carbohydrates will help convert these thyroid hormones T4 to T3 in the liver, and carbs are an essential part of that. So in other words, not only are they helping you build muscle, not only help you have better performance and better strength and better power output, but they're literally helping you build a better metabolism overall. And if you don't supply your body with enough carbohydrates, at least in the short term, it's not going to do much, but in the long term, it's going to fuck you up. And so there is something called gluconeogenesis, and a lot of people who are keto zealots and carnivore zealots will use this system as an excuse as to why they don't need carbs. Well, gluconeogenesis, it's going to kick in whenever you don't have enough carbs. But the thing is that long-term gluconeogenesis, if listeners don't know what that is, gluconeogenesis is basically
I was
when
going
your
to say,
body...
people don't even know what it is. And they are wanting to build muscle. If you're not fueling yourself adequately, and if you're only focusing on calories in and your training isn't there, you're breaking apart the very thing that you're trying to build, because now you're actually breaking apart the muscle that you actually have. That's what gluconeogenesis is. It's breaking apart proteins. And proteins are what make up your muscle. So if you want to keep breaking apart your muscle to fuel whatever the friggin' hell, like whatever we're trying to, okay, I'm going to say it in a second. If you want to lose muscle, cut out carbs, because what you're going to be running on is gluconeogenesis, and what gluconeogenesis runs on is aminos, which is your muscle tissue when there isn't adequate fuel anywhere else. That is exactly what I was going to touch on, but also because I wanted you to take this one now, cortisol, because I think, was it you that mentioned cortisol, or was it just in my head? Because I was thinking of cortisol. There is so much information there on cortisol, and it's something I really wanted to touch on, because everyone is so stressed out about cortisol, but then ironically, we are also so really scared of the very thing that helps buffer it. So the science pisses me off. Training fasted isn't going to lead to fat gain. Well, no, that's not what we're saying. We're saying that it is not conducive to the actual results that you want. You're coming here to build a physique. Building physique requires everything that Kenny just said, which is why I wanted to interject here, because I wanted you to bring in the cortisol thing more than anything. Because, for example, we want health. Okay, well, carbs fuel thyroid health, and it's probably the most beneficial thing for your hormones that you can have. It's not fats. People like, you need adequate fats for your hormones. Well, you know what actually matters more? Carbs and enough fuel. Because if you're underfueled, it doesn't matter how many fats you're having, your body is going to be running on overdrive, and you're going to screw yourself up. And the thing is, you can have like high fats. The thing is, most people are now also confused because so many people share their transformations or what worked for them with saturated fats. And saturated fats are probably the worst for your health. We want polyunsaturated fats. Wait, but seed oils make you fat, and they're bad for you, and they're toxic. Like, no wonder you're confused. But anyway, I digress. That was a tangent. It kind of factors into this, though, where there is so much argument at all these things. Why not just remove the oils in general and just go air fried, so you can save on calories there and actually eat eggs and olives and avocados and sardines and things that have omegas and like the actual healthy foods like seeds and nuts. But I wouldn't really recommend seeds and nuts if you don't weigh them and understand how many calories are in just the tiniest little bit, because snacking on them is the worst thing you can do, even though they're quote unquote healthy. Anyway, back to what I was saying to you. Cortisol, we're worried about cortisol, we're worried about insulin, we're worried about all these things. We already covered the fact that insulin is a huge issue if you're doing everything you're doing, because you're not building muscle. So yes, insulin is an issue, because now you just got rid of, or you're not trying to build something that actually helps with insulin management, which is muscle. Do you see why now building a physique is the most important thing you can do for your hormones? Muscle is the best thing you can do for your hormones because of the insulin. And the way that you get there is with carbs, which is then the best thing for your cortisol, fueling, sleeping. Anyway, cortisol, take it away. And the fasted and fed and that bullshit science.
Insulin, for those that don't know what that is, it's basically I call it the mailman of our body. What it's supposed to do, what's main role is, it's a protein carrier hormone that takes pretty much everything that you consume, whether it's proteins, carbs, and fats, when you eat food, it can get broken down to its most basic components. And when it gets broken down, those components, insulin, as your mailman, is going to take those components and mail them to different parts of your body, which includes your muscle cells, various organs like your liver, and even your fat cells. That last part, a lot of people get caught up with, where they think, oh my God, insulin's going to make me fat because it stores energy in my fat cells. But that's not necessarily true. Insulin is there to ensure that your mail, or the nutrients that you need to basically survive and also thrive, are getting to where they need to go. It would be like your mailman is just missing the mail all the time. Like, that would suck ass. You would never get your Amazon package. Like, that's not cool. But the healthier you are, the better insulin does at its job. Now, insulin and cortisol is another one. Cortisol is basically the stress hormone, and a lot of people freak out over it because they think it's going to make them fat, and you can start stressing out about cortisol, which will raise cortisol, which is ironic. But cortisol, it's not bad, nor is it good. It's just necessary. We need it to live. It is quite literally part of our survival. Without it, we would not be able to live. And one of the main functions of cortisol, and why that's the case, is that it's catabolic, and what it's catabolizing is basically stored energy. So in other words, when you go to the gym, for example, your cortisol is going to spike up because it's going to release stored energy. It's going to allow you to actually have energy to do the workout. Cortisol becomes problematic when basically you're stressed out all the time. And we're talking like mentally, emotionally, physically. It doesn't really matter. If you have some sort of stress response, it's going to release cortisol. And if cortisol is chronically spiked up, that's when it becomes a problem. Because ultimately, again, the body's going to prioritize what it's being told. And if you're telling your body, hey, I'm stressed out all the time, you're going to be in a flight or fight response, which will literally take you into this cortisol-ridden state. Because in the gym, for example, you're basically in a fighting state. You're fighting the weights. Or maybe you're going for a run, you're literally running, you're actively using energy. But if you're in the office and you see a bad email and you're like, holy shit, I'm about to get fired, and then you just start freaking out, cortisol is going to release blood sugar, all this blood sugar just flowing through, but you're just sitting there typing on your computer. If you're doing that all the time and you're not actually using that energy, yeah, that's going to mess you up. But insulin and cortisol, these two hormones, they communicate with each other. So when insulin goes up, cortisol goes down. When cortisol goes up, insulin goes down. So these two actually work together. And when you do work out, going back to carbohydrates, carbs will spike insulin the hardest out of all the macronutrients that you can consume. So it is actually in your best interest to have carbohydrates, especially around your workout. You can have it,
You just said spike insulin, the new thing that people are so scared of with blood sugar spikes. And this is part of what is actually beneficial with it. If you stay in that highly aroused cortisol state without getting that insulin buffer, which brings it back down, that is when you run into the cravings, the never feeling full, the body on overdrive. That's when it starts to then leak into your thyroid getting impacted, your other sex hormones getting impacted. And that's going to lead to you gaining belly fat without you even, you can be trying to lose fat all you want, but if you aren't fueling adequately, you can be overeating yet under fueling, and that can lead to you gaining belly fat. I think I said you can be in a calorie deficit yet under fueling at the same time and gaining belly fat. But that does not mean that you're gaining fat in a calorie deficit. Other things are being lost in the process, like muscle tissue, and it's being repositioned to belly fat. Or you're able to lose fat from other stores in your body, and instead it's now primarily getting redistributed to belly fat, which is what happens in perimenopause. Like, you can be gaining belly fat without being in a surplus while being in a deficit, because it just means that it's repartitioning from other areas because of what you're doing. The inputs matter to everything else. There's no point putting in inputs if it's not leading to the end result. And because you mentioned running, on a side tangent, there was one time where I was just feeling so battered up in my legs from running. I can't remember what I did differently, but it's like, well, cool, my legs are really sore. Does not mean that I built muscle. DOMS does not mean that you built muscle. You need to make sure that what you're experiencing is in the direction that you want. But the only reason I mentioned this is because it's so hard to do this without a coach understanding what information is for you. because it's so hard for you to make sense of it. You're not a professional in it. That's why you need to seek help. Why are we so averse to asking for the right help now? Because we are so confused. We've tried so many times before. We don't trust the process anymore. I actually think that's something really important for you to touch on. Sarah, I want you to touch on that one after Kenny finishes, because I think you'll talk on that one really well. Because I don't think people really trust really buying in anymore.
Yeah, and I was actually going to say something. So, like, right now we're getting into super deep science. I mean, we can go even deeper, but for most people, this is like, what the hell is this guy even talking about, type of thing. And I think that is part of the issue, honestly, where it is very science based now, which again is not an issue if you legitimately want to know what's actually happening to your body. But I think people are so lost in just the sauce of it all, especially with just the rise of what is optimal, what is science-based, what is not science-based, where now it's actually becoming a joke, where if you are a science-based coach, people are now making fun of us because it's like there are people out there who go really just crazy with it.
Well, I see it the other way around, to be honest. I see more people flocking to science-based, and that's why I have an issue. I know you have an issue with it as well, with science-based, because just because it's science-based does not mean that it's the right information for you, but because it makes so much sense, that's what we flock to. But also, sorry, I just thought of this one because I know you know the SS person who bases a lot of her female menopausal research on mice. And then I had someone come at me with, yeah, well, we share 80 or 90% of the DNA. I'll put it in the chat, 80 or 90% of the DNA with mice. It's like, well, you do realize that is a majority not. There is so much DNA there to be discussing. And the DNA that we are discussing right now is the stuff where humans are very much different from rodents. Just because it applies in some areas of research doesn't mean it applies in other areas of research. But you guys listening to this aren't taught about this stuff. And because we like just scrolling like this, I should get a marketer on my podcast just so they can explain what really sells on social media. So you guys are aware of this, but we go for things that tell stories now that put some flashy thing on the top. And that's why we're getting stuck, because we just want to get something that kind of either relieves our pain or that makes us click on it, but it's not going deep enough into the science. But the stuff that is kind of what we want to buy into when it comes to the science is something that actually either agrees with our confirmation bias or that is so out of the box. My God, that might be the new thing. And that's something Sarah mentioned before we clicked record as well, but that's something I wanted to say.
I feel like sometimes the science-based thing it's being used as a lever, true versus untrue, and they're not really seeing the context that everything's context driven. Like everything's context driven. And so it's really hard to say this is the absolute way to do it. Like this is the only way to do it. This is the best way to do it, et cetera, et cetera. And I feel like that type of marketing, which it is, has kind of ruined what is actually, I guess, applicable. I think even coaches themselves are confused too, because you have leaders in the industry that are also partaking in this type of behavior, and it's really disheartening. Yeah, I mean, it's I'm nobody compared to some of these larger names, right? I don't really have a massive following, but there's a difference between, I guess, marketing yourself to get to hold a certain stance versus just to be, I don't know, context driven. It's kind of a weird one. I'm not sure if that's what you're asking.
Oh, no, that was exactly it. And how do you see this going to Sarah now? How do you see this now making it really hard for people to buy in especially for the long term?
Yeah, it's definitely shifted a lot, I think, and it's hard because we see a lot of, to Kenny's point, a lot of these larger accounts, right? And it's almost like it becomes, I can't think of a better term other than this becomes like God's word, right, over anything else. And then you don't research because you're so overwhelmed by the information that you're intaking, because you're just scrolling, but you have someone that you trust because of a following, and you're just kind of blindly following that without really questioning if this is right for you as a consumer, as someone who's trying to better themselves from a health perspective. It's literally just blindly following something because the landscape of fitness as a whole in social media does have certain leaders in the industry that people just really they flock to because of I don't want to say shock factor, but it is the content that is made is made to grab attention. It's not necessarily something that's made to better you. It's made to draw attention to that account. And again, I think a lot of people are now jaded. I mean, if you scroll on TikTok, I was literally just telling Kenny this, like TikTok is now it's a sales app. That's what that is. It's not anything beyond that. You're scrolling on there and there's you're selling things. You get every third video, you maybe get a random person, but for the most part, it's constant selling in a way that connects with the individual, but without kind of really taking the individual into account when it comes to fitness. I feel like the individual has essentially gotten lost from a content perspective, and it's just a blanketed kind of thing. It's really hard to kind of put into words in terms of like the landscape of fitness now overall from a consumer standpoint.
I think I just conceptualized it for you because like you mentioned before, where people don't understand the reality of progress, I think this is where people have the idea of, I know that I want to lose fat. I know that I want to lose weight. I know that this is the way that I measure it with a scale and going down and eating less. Like they theoretically know that this is what they want, but their actions are more so just scrolling these different things and trying out all these different things like test and try, but they don't understand that it's not just test and try to see what works, because it's whatever works in the short term isn't going to guarantee that it works in the long term.
Exactly. So it's taking that content and saying, hey, I have the information, I'm going to do this, but then not knowing what to do after. What happens after the after photo? What happens after you lose the 10 pounds? What do you do to keep it off? Do you have guidance at that point? Because it's one thing to gather information on social media and another to take the correct action. It's hard to do that when you're literally infiltrated with so much information. How do you know what is the right direction for you and your body?
I just found exactly what I wanted to say. So I put this post in this group and someone replied to me. And it's hilarious to believe that this is what people think. I think it's a robot account. I bet you it's a robot account because anyway, it is human instinct to align your actions to what you want as an outcome. What world do you live in? Which human has an instinct to align their actions to an outcome? We are irrational as hell. We don't just align out. We can want something and still sabotage ourselves and be so freaking aware of the fact that we're sabotaging. That is why we are struggling. It is not human instinct to align actions to outcomes, especially when you don't even know what those actions are. You can think they're the right actions. There's confirmation bias. There's recency bias. There's this looks like the best thing ever bias. There's I like this, so I'm going to go with it bias. I want to avoid this, so I'm going to go with the other thing bias. I just made up about 3 of those, but there are the confirmed biases that do exist. And that this is the thing, like we aren't always going to do the very thing that's best in our interest. And the huge topic that I wanted to really kind of bring this to, because it is so in line with the realities of progress and something that I want to tie up the podcast with once we dig into this one. The hot thing out there is a lot targeting women over 40 these days. There's this podcast that I really need to go through and start to use as content ideas. I swear, I just don't have the time for it. But I'm being sarcastic. I love just how easy it is for people to find her stuff because of how clickbaity it is, because of how SEO friendly it is. And she is getting a lot more kind of engagement on this because I can see it in the way that people are interacting with her Instagrams as well. But there's the fat burning pathway and the fat storing pathway. I want to kind of have that as the summary of this, but then I really wanted to tie this back to where we started the conversation, which is why building muscle and doing this the right way is the number one thing. So I really want to drive home that menopause part and what's true. And then why that whole thing that we said at the beginning is even more fundamental the older that you get.
Yeah, this is such a good topic and a whole podcast in itself. But I will say it's interesting. The muscle that you build now, the way you're gonna look in menopause is gonna be way different if you take the time to build muscle before than if you try to do it after. We have clients who built, like, were in the bodybuilding space like when they were younger, and hormones are set, they're good, and the ability of their body to change is so much easier. It's still difficult, but it's so much easier because they did all the things to build muscle when they were young, that into menopause it's not even really a factor. Might have to push a little bit harder just because of the hormonal factor, but it's a 9-day difference in comparison to someone who dieted their whole life and is now trying to build muscle post-menopause and trying to lose fat post-menopause. It's much harder. It's not impossible, but it is much harder in comparison to someone who did take the time to build muscle from a younger age all the way through menopause. In terms of body composition and health and all of those things. It's not to dishearten anybody who is postmenopausal from trying to build muscle or lose fat. Again, it's not impossible. You just have to work a little bit harder. Those of you who are not in menopause yet that are listening, who are younger, if you take time to do it now, it is going to be so much easier throughout your life to just continually have a good body composition to where you're not necessarily super hung up on a ton of belly fat storage. And again, everybody's different, everybody's body composition is different, but that is definitely something that we have noticed with clients on our own roster in comparison to someone who built muscle versus those who dieted, and the struggle of being able to make those changes and how much different their whole journey is, even though they're the same age.
Kenny, I want you to expand on this one because I still feel like this, because I'm just going to make you the one that talks on the hormones because I love Sarah talking on the muscle part, but this one, because I heard this one on a podcast as well where someone's like, well, I realized that I was just gaining more and more belly fat no matter what I was doing, and she kept avoiding and ignoring the truth because she didn't want to accept it. It was on a podcast, she was talking about it, and the truth was that she just didn't want to lift weights because she didn't enjoy lifting weights. She wanted to do Pilates because Pilates was her thing. And she had to really just adopt the things that she didn't want to do and get out of her own self-denial to build muscle. And that is what finally stopped her gaining belly fat and not looking the way that she wanted to look, because it's inevitable that your body shape is going to change. If you're not actively building muscle, it is the only thing that is going to help you in perimenopause. There is literally nothing else out there that can help you except muscle, and muscle needs the carbs. And this is why I wanted to quickly get you to tie this one off, is because women think that as soon as they turn a certain age, carbs don't work the same for them anymore. Food doesn't work the same for them anymore. So take that.
Yeah. It really comes down to what you're trying to do with yourself. Like, for example, like the energy demands. So Pilates, nothing wrong with that, but in the same breath, I mean, honestly, weightlifting is one of the best modalities of exercise in general. I mean, like, think about this, like when you go and injure yourself and you have to go to physical therapy, they're basically having you lift weights. They're having you lift weights, whether it's with a band or a dumbbell or something, because that modality is going to help you get better. It's going to help you literally get healthier and get back to a normal, just thriving life, right? So if you were to capitalize on that concept where, hey, I'm not happy where I'm at, I wanted to have more with my life, or have more with my body, or have more with my energy, or whatever it is, building muscle is the way you have to, is the way you do it. Legitimately is lifting weights. And the reason for that is that mechanical tension, which all that is just basically, if I were to lift anything, like lift something like this or lift a very heavy weight, the force that is needed to lift something or move something, that is mechanical tension. And the greater mechanical tension you experience, the greater you're going to have muscle growth. So mechanical tension is the key driver to building muscle, which is why weightlifting is such a powerful tool in so many different ways, like for athletes, for physical therapy, for occupational therapy, for just getting healthier in general. The idea of toning and sculpting and shaping, however you want to, put it, weightlifting was often associated with, looking bulky. And males, even males that I deal with, also have this kind of concept where it's like, oh my gosh, I don't want to look like a bodybuilder. And it's like, well, wait a second. I don't think you understand like how much time and how much intensity and effort you would have to do to even remotely look close to that. Like I think there's a misperception of what weightlifting does and what muscle growth is going to look like for most people. If you're natural, like what I mean by that is even with HRT, your body is going to grow muscle in accordance to your frame. And unless you're training a very specific way where you're trying to, I don't know, grow your glutes or grow your legs or grow your shoulders, like you actually spend more time developing those areas, then you're going to have those areas develop a little more. But for the most part, your body will grow in accordance to your frame. So muscle growth is very important. In Pilates or spin or running or swimming or any other modality, like those things can totally benefit us, right? Like there is some, benefit to making your core stronger, to having better proprioception, to having better cardiovascular health. They all tie together. They're all part of one system. And I think a lot of people also get caught up with what is the best exercise to get me the best results? What is in alignment with what you want out of your goals? And if your goals do not match your actions, then there's going to be frustration, there's going to be confusion, and then you're going to be jumping from program to program and spending a bunch of money trying to find the solution when really it's probably a combination of all of those things. So I think the basis of just general health is living a fulfilled life, but also doing things that would actually allow your body to grow and respond in a good way, which is, again, mechanical tension. And that is going to be the most pronounced with weightlifting. So, and it's not just about building muscle. I mean, it's like even stability. Like as you get older, your hip health, your leg health, your ability to walk, your ability to move and do these things. Like right now, if you're young and you're not in a wheelchair or using a cane or anything like that, you don't really know what that feels like until you get to that point. And trust me when I say this, like you do want to spend some time getting strong, gaining powerful, not for the sake of lifting heavy or for the sake of looking a certain way, but like literally for the last chapters of your life, you're going to be able to do much more things. I worked with I was in the physical therapy field and I worked with the geriatric population, and I've seen people who did not take care of themselves when they were younger. They ate healthy, they did a lot of things, whatever, but they never actually partook in weightlifting, and they were just falling apart by the end of their life, and it was very, very hard. Whereas those that did lift, it was fine. So that's it.
Wait, sorry. I know we're tying this one up now, but there's just something that I think is so overlooked, because as soon as you said that, something that is really getting to me with my own parents. I'm sorry, mom and dad, I'm putting you under the slack. What's the word? The flack, whatever. Their brains, it's like people don't understand how helpful it is for your brain to lift weights. It is fundamental to a healthy brain as well. Like it's not the cure all be all panacea, but I can promise you anything that just the act of lifting really heavy ass weights and the lifestyle you create through it is probably one of the best things you can do for your brain health. And the worst thing to experience even yourself, let alone have your kids. If you say that you're doing whatever it is for your kids, or you feel selfish, like, you know what's selfish? What my parents did to me. Like, as in, like, not actually putting themselves first. And well, that's because weightlifting wasn't a thing back then, but it's not doing the things, like, you don't have to like it to begin with. Having, like, just because lifting weights doesn't fulfill you doesn't mean don't do it. Like, do it because you need to do it. And this is where I just wanted to tie the loop, because having a fulfilled life means everything that Kenny said, where Health and fitness need to be a complement to it, as in it needs to be the foundation. And that foundation needs to be complementary to what you're trying to build, not against what you're trying to build. Yes, it needs to work with it. And no, don't go off your first instinct like that bot on my comments said, because humans are not rational. You need to figure out what actually needs to be aligned first. And that is a process. You're not going to figure it out overnight. But you can't have a fulfilled life if everything is centering around the calories you eat, what your body looks like, etc. You need to have a hobby and things outside, because the only thing that is going to set you back is impatience, is not staying in this game long enough, is wanting results now, or comparing it to the social feed, or wanting to just lose fat, etc., and see physical changes. I would be the same thing too if that was my only focus. If that was the only thing that I was surveillancing, that was the only thing that I had to focus on, which is typically why a lot of people end up with body image issues to start with, because there is so much wrong going on in their lives that they want to fix their body. So that becomes the sole focus. But that's okay, as long as you then learn to expand it so that you can have a fulfilled life while doing the very things you need to do to move forward. So to tie a bow on that, as I was saying with marriage, permanent change means you need to understand that what you did to create this partnership as well is what you're going to still need to maintain to be able to keep that marriage alive. Otherwise, you're not going to end up with a fulfilled marriage. You're going to end up like wanting to cheat on each other because you're not getting what you want from each other. You're not communicating your needs. So we need to stop treating it like, let's just get through the honeymoon phase and that's it. Might as well just keep doing your one night stands if you're not willing to commit to the actions to keep, like, to continue a fostering relationship. And I can bet you anything that that isn't going to be a great relationship if you're always berating your partner. And the only reason I brought that in as well is because you can only have a good relationship with someone else when you have a good relationship with yourself, because otherwise that's going to factor into the other person. And if you're always berating yourself, that's going to impact how you show up to the other person as well. This all fits together. You cannot have a great relationship with yourself to have a great relationship or to be the best mom, whatever you can be, if you feel shit within yourself. So this all factors in together. It factors into what Sarah said at the beginning. If you are in that unhealthy place and neglecting yourself and only chasing fat loss, you're going to continue to want to fix yourself, which is going to take everything else out of the picture.
I was going to say, just like anything worth having is going to take work and effort. And that like ties perfectly into the marriage analogy. You know, it's not always going to be a walk in the park. It's always, there's going to be examples.
You guys give examples as in like, because you and Kenny are like just because if you remember 5 years ago when we had our last podcast, I said, you guys are like couple goals.
And I've been married, this is 10 years going on 11. Next year will be 11. And you have to do it because you want it. If you're doing it for external validation, it's not going to last. If you're building a relationship because of external validation, and I say that because of just social media, this is a really good example, just social media as a whole. I feel like when you're seeking validation in your relationship, it's usually not a good sign. If you're seeking validation and you're building a body because you want validation, it's usually not going to last. You have to really want something from a deeper level versus just, I just want to look a certain way, because that's so easy to just fade away. It's so easy and it's not to say that you shouldn't have aesthetics goals, like that's definitely not it. But when you are only tied to an aesthetic goal, and this is like the whole conversation of like longevity, building muscle for longevity, not just for looks, because when you tie it to something deeper than just, I want to look good, it's way easier to continue to move through that goal when you have a deeper resounding why. The same with a marriage. Like when you have a deeper resounding why, when you're with someone, it makes working through the hard shit way easier.
I love that. I love that so much. I hope you guys got a lot out of this podcast. I hope that understanding or relating to the marriage aspect at that end and truly coming at it from that long-term perspective to stick through the hard shit as well, not just chase the next fleeting thing, is something that will help you stay in it just a little bit longer when you feel like things are sticky. But you just need to make sure that those actions are aligned in the right direction. But with that, I'm going to put Kenny's and Sarah's Instagrams down below. You guys will hear me on the next podcast. Please share some takeaways with us. And if you can get me up to the 100 5-star ratings. That would be awesome. And you'll hear me on the next podcast. Bye.